7 and 8. James 3, 7 and 8. For every species of beast and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea, is tamed and has been tamed by the human race, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison.
So more than a few times I got to go horseback riding. I don't know if you ever got to do that. And so it's a lot of fun. And of course, they probably tell you when you first start to meet the horse is that they say, well, it can sense fear. So, just don't be afraid. And I remember thinking, too, that, well, I sense the fear in me, so I'm sure he's going to sense it, too. But then once you kind of get over that and you're on the horse, you realize there's a lot of power there. And I think that's part of the excitement is realizing that this animal is under your control. You pull the reins a certain way, and that bit moves him a certain direction. And once you get past that moment, it's pretty fun. I even got to where I could gallop and things like that, and it's quite it's a good memory for me. One of the times I got to go, I probably went 4 or 5 times, maybe at total, but there was one time it did not go well, and it was because, in fact, they even kind of told me, he said, well, this horse is kind of fidgety, I guess. So I think they told me after all this happened, actually. And I'm not a horse, back rider, professional at all. I was just kind of hanging out with everybody, and everything was fine until an airplane shadow just happened to come right in front of the horse. And I always saw in movies, rodeos and things like that, the horses kind of went like this. This guy just went straight up and down. It was really strange. And I hung on. So I think, that might have been the last time that I horseback. I'm not sure about the order. But it's one thing to have that much power under your control. It's very empowering to be like, I'm running the show. And then to suddenly have that out of your control is pretty scary. I don't think it's a mistake or a coincidence that God designed the horse and then used it to make a point about our words. It just makes sense. So James 3:3, I'm going to go back a little bit before what Rocky read. There's some things, of course, in this chapter that stick in our minds about our words. And James 3:3 says, now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, there's that control, we direct their entire body as well. That one little bit was controlling the horse. I lost control of that, and that lost control of the whole horse. And that's part of his point, that if just losing control of the tongue can affect things in a big, big way. It seems so small, but it has a huge effect. And then he also brings up a ship. This is James 3, verse 4. This is something, maybe some of you have gone sailing and been involved with boats. I have a little bit, but nowhere near what they're talking about here. James 3:4. God says, look at the ships also, though they are so great and are driven by strong winds, huge forces, are still directed by a very small rudder, wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. We would probably think of what would come to our mind probably more often would be a steering wheel. And so the idea, I'm keeping things under control. You can imagine you've lost control. If you're in Colorado, you know what that experience is like, to suddenly not have control over your car on ice or something like that. I noticed this, and I'm not sure I'm grasping everything there is to say about this, but I noticed this, at least with the horse and the boat, it's not just about losing control, it's about determining direction. And I got to thinking about that our words, I wonder if that has something to say about the direction of our lives. If it is like a rudder or a bit, it's not just a matter of control, it's about where my life is going. And that kind of jumped out at me, that the words we speak could steer our lives, they set a course. So you begin to realize as you're going through here, God's taking the issue very seriously. He did not just throw one analogy out and then he was done. Oh, it's like the bit of a horse, let's move on. He brings up the horse, he brings up the ship. He drives the point home and again. He turns to fire next. Here's verse 5. James 3:5. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. I can't think of any stronger terms to have red arrows pointing towards the tongue and saying, be careful what you're saying and what you're doing with your words. I don't know if you remember years ago, a lot of the Colorado fires, and of course when they start, there's an investigation as to how it started. And I remember, if I remember correctly, there was one that started because a fire person, people put out fires, she took out some letters that some guy had sent that had broken up with her, is that correct? And she was burning them in her backyard, and she caused the fire. She thought such a little thing, and yet it caused all kinds of damage. I mean, look at the terms in this, starting James 3:5. All these terms. I mean, there's a serious warning about the danger of fire. That's one of the first things we learn as little kids. Don't play with matches. Maybe we should teach little kids don't play with words either. It's really, really dangerous. And fire, it's a great analogy because it's something that can keep you warm, and yet it can destroy everything. Your words could do a lot of good and keep somebody warm, but it could destroy them. It matters what we say. It can encourage, but it can destroy. But recently, the part of God's analogy in these series of analogies, there was one in particular that really caught my eye, and it's James 3, starting with verse 7, where Rocky read for us. Maybe it's because we've been watching documentaries about animals and things like that. But notice what it's saying about the tongue. For every species of beasts and birds, there's a lot of them, of reptiles and creatures of the sea, is tamed and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. That's quite a statement. The whole animal kingdom, every creature out there, there are certain circumstances where we can bring it under control, but no one has ever caged the tongue. And how dangerous that is to carry around with you every day, I think we forget the power at our disposal. Years ago, we were in Yellowstone. I used to have kind of a lectureship series there, and I remember my uncle was talking, and while we're sitting there kind of in an outdoor amphitheater, a bear wandered into the area, and we kind of gave him some room. But some people didn't. Some people let their kids go up, and just kind of get close, and we were like, what are you doing? They had seen too many Disney movies. This is not how it works in real life. That is a wild animal. Fortunately, he kind of moved on and was nervous about our situation, being there, and then he left. And then I remember Uncle Jack made a joke. I don't know if you, kind of obscure biblical reference, he said, no jokes about my bald head. So if you get that. So, but I think that's what happens. I don't know if it's Disney's fault or something, but we think, we're going to go up to a wild animal and we're going to break out in song and sing and dance together. That's not what's going to happen. He's going to eat you. He's a wild animal. There are some animals that we have domesticated, but there are some that we fail to grasp the danger. You've probably heard enough stories about exotic pets and the tragedies that have come from that. Say, oh no, my pet monster, Billy, ate the family because, it's because you realize, they're in the cage, everything seems fine for a while, and they're thinking everything's okay, but they forgot. There's this nature in there that will never go away. For some of these animals, it will never go away. And they think it's under control, and the moment you let your guard down, it leads to real tragedy. And I think maybe we should relegate the tongue to that. Say, okay, yeah, we're going to hang out. I need you. Kind of like you need a horse to get things done. But I'm never going to turn my back on you. I'm never going to just let you roam around because you are dangerous. This is not a Disney movie. These are wild animals, and the tongue is involved in that. So I've noticed, I've brought it up before, there's been a lot of TV shows, we watch where families or situations, people are yelling at each other, and they need conflict to make a good story and things like that. But I notice more and more, and I wonder if people think that this is how real life is supposed to work. People just let loose. They'll just say horrible things. And then, before the episode's over, they'll come back and say, I didn't mean what I said. Okay, that's fine. And that's great. I love there can be apologies and forgiveness. But I think it inadvertently treats the tongue as less dangerous than it actually is. You can't unsay stuff. Now, you can be forgiven and, boy, relish those relationships where you can move on. I've had people forgive me and vice versa who say, yeah, that was not what I meant to say at all. And so we appreciate that. But that doesn't mean we just let it out of its cage and do whatever it wants to do. Forgiveness is good, but sometimes I think the shows we watch trivialize the damage that can be done. Believe it or not, maybe I'll talk about this in more detail some other time. I used to work in an art gallery, belonged to my uncle, same uncle. My cousin and I lived in the back of that art gallery, and I have some experience with wood. And lately we had that play, and I made some things. I shared with you that you could tell the stuff that I made. But I'm not much of a woodworker, but there's one rule that stuck with me through the years, and I bet some of you who have worked with wood know what I'm about to say. It's kind of the universal rule for working with wood. Measure twice, cut once. I bet a lot of you have heard that before. And you think through it, it just makes sense. And you know why you measure twice and cut once? Because you can't uncut wood. And if it's too short, I cheat. I just cut it way long and then I keep, But if you cut it too short, you're in trouble. There's extra care in measuring because you can't fix it easily. Again, I really want to emphasize forgiveness is so key, and all of us have been blessed by that. But we should be very careful about how we say. Here's Romans 1:19. I think this is kind of the scriptural angle on this same law of measure twice, cut once. This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. That's why if anger and your tongue hang out, bad news. So I'm going to share something with you. I don't know. I think part of me just wanted to let it slide off into the past and forget about it, but I think I need to mention it, and it's a good reminder. When I was growing up, there's a song in our book that had different lyrics, and some of you will remember it. It's 719. We won't sing it. I just want to point out the lyrics to it. It's different than when I was growing up, 719. We know the song is Angry Words. 719. And I don't know why they changed it. Maybe they thought this was too harsh. I'm going to read the part the way it is now, and I'm going to tell you what the song used to say. On 719, the last verse, the second half, show our love to one another with abundance of kind words. That's well put, and I like it. That's not what it used to say. You can nod your head slightly if you know what it used to say. You know what it used to say? Brightest links of life are broken by a single angry word. That's what it used to say. Brightest links of life are broken by a single angry word. Even as a little kid, that stuck in my head. I think it's so well put. And I don't know, maybe the people who compiled the song said, that's a little harsh, but now I'm thinking maybe it needs to be. So that we're reminded. I thought that was a beautiful way to describe a terrible thing. And again, so nice as Christians to be able to recover, to forgive. Here's one more horse analogy. James 1:26. This always gets me, and it's very important to not just miss this verse as just saying don't use foul language, because it's way past that. James 1:26. If anyone thinks himself to be religious, I'm religious, and yet does not bridle his tongue, that's horse language, but deceives his own heart, this man's religion is worthless. That is startling to me. If I do not keep my tongue under control, that means all the things that I do that add up to my religion mean nothing. And that's a real wake-up call for me, at least. The words we say make all the difference. Not just foul language, but negative language, gossip, all the things we know. All of us have been guilty at some point. And I think that's why God was so adamant in presenting so many analogies, because it covers everybody. Across the board, we've all fought this. It's supposed to use it for encouragement. We should be so busy focused on encouraging that there's not time to be negative. So focused on being optimistic that there's no reason to be negative. And to be focused on kindness. And it's just like everything that we talk about as Christians. Every day we should get better. I want to do better tomorrow and be careful about what I say. Even what I think. That's kind of important too. It hit me, just a final thought. Our physical strength, you get your physical strength, and then as time goes by, there's some wear and tear, and you can't quite jump as high, can't run as fast, kind of some wear and tear. But the power of your tongue will never, ever go away. It will remain powerful to the very, very end, and so that requires a certain amount of responsibility and caution every time we use it. The power of the tongue remains with you the rest of your life, and so it's a challenge for all of us. Caution about the danger, but also I'd like to leave you with the thought that it's exciting to realize how much power, that if you can get that horse under control, you can go places and accomplish a great deal. And I hope this is encouraging to you as we stand together and sing.